In early February of this year, a group of lawmakers in South Dakota tried to pass a bill to ban radical medical experimentation on young children. Under heavy pressure from business groups like the Chamber of Commerce, the Republican-dominated legislature voted it down. Why would they do that? Well, as you probably guessed by now, it's because conducting radical medical experiments on children is now popular. These experiments are justified in the name of transgenderism. The failed South Dakota bill would have barred doctors from performing sex reassignment surgery on children under the age of 16. Now, these are radical, often irreversible procedures that can include double mastectomies, sterilization, and castration. The bill would have also barred doctors from prescribing hormones to aid in the transition process, once again, only for those under 16. Now, it used to be that everyone agreed with this idea. It was common sense. Adults are free to do essentially what they want. But if you're 15 or 9 or 10, you are too young to consent to profound acts, too young to consent to sex, too young to have your sex organs cut off. It's simple. This has been an operating understanding in the West for 1,000 years. But the reticence to mutilate children, which was once now morally obvious, is now seen as bigoted. As the transgender movement has grown, activists have pushed to transition children at younger and younger ages. For children with gender dysphoria at a sufficiently young age, it has now become common to place children on drugs like Lupron, which suppress hormone production and thereby block the onset of puberty. At least one Democratic presidential candidate has endorsed providing these drugs, puberty blockers, at taxpayer expense. So the question is, are puberty blockers safe? And the answer is, we have no idea if they're safe. Lupron was initially developed to treat advanced prostate cancer in elderly men, a case in which severe or long-term side effects were not much of a concern. The drug has also been used to treat precocious puberty. That's a rare and harmful condition where children as young as 5 undergo premature hormonal changes. But what's the effect of blocking puberty, possibly for years, on children who don't have any underlying medical cause to do so? Well, we don't know the answer to that. Activists claim the drug's effects are fully reversible. But we don't know that that's true. Besides delaying physical maturity, Lupron also affects bone density. There are thousands, literally thousands, of young adults who took Lupron as children and now have to battle with bone and joint problems more common in the elderly. A few small studies also indicate that when used to arrest puberty, Lupron can lower a child's IQ, cognitive ability, by 7 to 9 points, which is a lot. If that's really the case, it wouldn't be surprising, since puberty is crucial to completing the brain's development. And speaking of the brain, the rush to place children on puberty blockers is justified on the grounds of psychological health. Gender dysphoric kids who can't go on hormones right away, we are told, will likely become depressed or suicidal. Okay. But it turns out that depression is in fact a known side effect of puberty blockers. Irony of irony. In a recent study from the UK, after a year on puberty blockers, children were dramatically more likely to agree with the statement, quote, "I deliberately try to hurt or kill myself," while they were taking the drugs. So far, there are 0 long-term studies looking at the physical or mental effect of healthy children going on puberty blockers, whether they later go through a full sex change or not. Similarly, we know almost nothing about the long-term prognosis for children who undergo full physical transitions. It's simply too new. We don't know. We do have studies, though, on what happens to gender dysphoric children who don't receive puberty blockers. In about 80% of those cases, boys who wish they were girls or girls who wish they were boys eventually get over it and turn out fine, with no radical treatments necessary. As adults, many of these children become gay or bisexual, but they still identify with their biological sex, and they do not want sex change surgery. Think about that. That means that most, if not all, children with gender dysphoria should wait until adulthood to transition. Otherwise, the vast majority of them will get expensive, invasive, potentially dangerous, possibly irreversible treatments they never needed, and in the end wouldn't have wanted anyway. But activists can't wait for adulthood. They want any children with gender dysphoria to be pushed into a full transition as quickly as possible. In other words, they want doctors to carry out a vast human experiment with this nation's children, your children, as its subjects. And it really is a vast experiment. In 2009, the UK's Gender Identity Development Service, or GIDS, received 77 referrals for child gender dysphoria. A decade later, they received almost 2,600. That's an increase of more than 3,000%. Notably, while a decade ago most gender dysphoric children were biologically male, today a majority are biologically female. So why is that? Seems worth finding out. And despite the professional risks, some have tried to do so. In 2018, Brown University researcher Lisa Littman found that many teenage girls are abruptly identifying as transgender after seeing a friend do so, or after being exposed to pro-trans material online, and there's an awful lot of that. In other words, impressionable teen girls may literally be taking part in a fad that involves irreversible surgery at the end of it. Here's a terrifying quote from the Times of London, a mainstream British newspaper, and we're quoting here. 35 GIDS clinicians have resigned in the past 3 years, many alarmed by the rush to medicalization and the way Instagram trans influencers and the CBBC program I Am Leo present transition as uncomplicated. They say they are seeing girls with a panoply of other issues: anxiety, depression, self-harm, undiagnosed autism, victims of homophobic bullying and sexual abuse, for whom transition to a male body was presented online as the universal panacea. Often a normal tomboyish disgust at their new breasts, eliciting sudden and unwanted sexual attention from men, is interpreted as a certainty that they are in the wrong body. Yet instead of interrogating these underlying issues, clinicians are told to affirm a young person's trans identity and prescribe puberty blockers that trans campaigners fiercely insist are their right, unquote. Think about it. That's horrifying. That's not medicine. It's something else. At this moment, 19 U.S. states ban so-called conversion therapy for minors. That's a therapy that claims it's possible for gay people to become heterosexual. Now, the states have banned it, even though it involves no surgery, no medication, no physical treatments, on the grounds that it doesn't work and it could drive gay teenagers into depression or suicide. In effect, and this is the key, those states have said that if you want to provide a risky elective therapy with no proof it'll work, you have to wait until a child has become an adult. That makes sense. Similarly, many states ban minors from getting tattoos for the same reason. They're permanent, and they can change your life forever. So kids ought to wait till adulthood before they make that choice. This used to be obvious, once again. But on the far more radical treatments used for transgenderism, states are doing nothing at all. South Dakota lawmakers had the chance to say no and spare their children from this insanity, but they declined to do that. Why? Well, the Chamber of Commerce attacked the bill. They said it threatened the state's economic development. And apparently Republicans in South Dakota agreed shamefully. And by the way, it really was Republicans who did this. The South Dakota House has 59 Republicans and just 11 Democrats. The Senate is 30 Republicans to 5 Democrats. And yet a bill to protect children from medical experimentation still couldn't get through the State House. Remember that Republicans will do almost anything to protect businesses' access to cheap labor. But your children, protecting your children, they won't lift a finger.